Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're heading into some really uncharted territory.
Definitely uncharted.
You've been exploring dreams and consciousness, even venturing into the possibility of other dimensions.
Right.
Well, get ready, because we're about to take all of that to a whole new level.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Our source material this time is a series of personal audio recordings.
Personal audio recordings.
Yeah, and in these recordings, the speaker is chronicling their encounters with beings that they believe are extraterrestrial.
It's fascinating how they go beyond just describing the encounters. They
Mm-mm.
actually try to apply a kind of scientific framework
Yeah?
to these deeply personal and subjective experiences.
Right.
They even use the term metaphysical empiricism.
It's like they're trying to bridge the gap between science and spirituality in a way.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
And the detail in these encounters is incredible. The speaker specifically mentions that these encounters happen when they're sleeping in a particular spot in their house.
Oh, wow.
They even connected to the concept of incubi and succubi.
That connection to incubi and succubi really makes you think about how cultural narratives shape our understanding of the unknown.
Totally.
I mean, throughout history, people have used folklore and mythology to explain experiences that just defy rational explanation.
It's like our brains are wired to find patterns and meaning, even when we're dealing with something totally outside our normal realm of experience.
I think that's a fundamental aspect of human cognition.
And the speaker doesn't hold back on the details. They even describe these encounters as being, quote, more erotic than normal sex.
That's a really intriguing detail.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think it suggests that we need to look beyond the literal when we analyze these kinds of accounts.
Okay.
Is the speaker just describing a physical sensation, or could it be a symbolic representation of a deeper psychological or emotional experience?
Hmm.
The language of dreams is often metaphorical, tapping into those subconscious desires and anxieties.
So maybe the erotic aspect is less about physical intimacy and more about a sense of power or vulnerability or even a merging of consciousness.
Right. It's like the speaker is using the language they have to describe something that just transcends our typical understanding of physical reality.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that dreams, especially vivid ones, can feel incredibly real in the moment.
Absolutely.
The speaker also describes this feeling of being tranquilized before these encounters occur.
That makes me think about the phenomenon of sleep paralysis.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, sleep paralysis can feel so real and often involves hallucinations.
Could that be what the speaker's actually experiencing?
It's definitely a possibility worth considering.
Tell me more about sleep paralysis.
Well, it occurs during that transition between sleep and wakefulness,
Okay.
and it's characterized by a temporary inability to move or speak.
So you're fully aware of your surroundings, but you can't control your body.
Precisely.
That sounds terrifying.
It can be, and it often involves hallucinations.
Really?
People experiencing sleep paralysis often report seeing or feeling a presence in the room.
Wow.
Sometimes even sensing pressure on their chest or a feeling of being suffocated.
So the speaker's description of feeling tranquilized and being unable to move could very well align with the symptoms of sleep paralysis.
I think that's a very plausible interpretation.
Like their brain is trying to make sense of these strange physical sensations
Right.
by weaving them into this whole narrative.
Our minds are incredibly adept at creating stories to explain the unexplainable.
It's like we're all storytellers at heart trying to make sense of the world, even when it throws us those curveballs.
Exactly.
And speaking of curveballs, the speaker also mentions something else that occurs when they sleep in that same specific location. Vivid dreams featuring distorted versions of their house.
That's interesting. This is where the influence of environment on dream content gets really intriguing.
Right.
Can't say for sure, but could there be specific environmental factors in that part of the house that are contributing to these recurring dream themes?
Like what kind of factors?
It could be something as subtle as the temperature or the lighting or even electromagnetic fields.
Wow. I never even considered that.
Our physical surroundings could be playing a role in shaping our dream experiences.
It's like our dreams are this conversation between our inner world and the external world.
I like that analogy.
And get this, during their search for answers online, the speaker stumbles upon accounts from others who claim to have experienced similar encounters.
This is where we need to talk about confirmation bias.
Okay.
When we encounter something that challenges our understanding of the world,
Right.
we tend to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs.
Even if that information might not be entirely accurate.
Exactly. It's like if you're convinced your house is haunted, you'll start noticing every creak and groan as evidence of a ghost.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So the speaker finding these online accounts could be less about validating their experiences and more about their brain selectively focusing on information that aligns with their pre-existing belief.
It's like our brains are playing tricks on us.
In a way.
But the speaker also mentions musician Bobby Brown, who has publicly spoken about similar experiences.
Right.
They see this as further evidence that these encounters are real.
It's fascinating how we look to public figures and celebrities for validation.
Yeah.
Especially when we're dealing with experiences that might be perceived as taboo or outside the norm.
If someone like Bobby Brown, a well-known figure, openly talks about encounters with extraterrestrials, it does lend a certain level of credibility.
I think it can create a sense of legitimacy for others who might have felt hesitant to share their own stories.
It's like a domino effect.
Yeah, one person speaking out can empower others to do the same.
And the speaker is adamant that these encounters aren't just dreams. They believe they're interacting with interdimensional beings.
That's a bold claim.
They even bring up the hypnagogic state as a possible explanation for the vividness and realism of these experiences.
The hypnagogic state is such a fascinating area of consciousness research.
What is it exactly?
Well, it's that twilight zone between waking and sleep.
Okay.
It's characterized by vivid imagery hallucinations and a blurring of the lines between internal and external reality.
So like our brains are creating a surrealist masterpiece right before we drift off to sleep.
It's a really apt description.
And the speaker describes these encounters as feeling more real than a typical dream.
Right, more like a waking experience.
Could this be a characteristic of the hypnagogic state?
Absolutely.
So we're seeing a fascinating interplay here between subjective experience, psychological phenomena, and the speaker's own attempts to make sense of what's happening.
It's like they're piecing together a puzzle, using pieces from science, folklore, and their own personal intuition.
It's a reminder that the world is full of mysteries, and sometimes the most profound insights come from venturing beyond our comfort zones and embracing the unknown.
Speaking of venturing beyond comfort zones, the speaker takes a really fascinating leap. They connect their experiences to some pretty mind-blowing ideas about advanced civilizations and virtual interaction.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting.
Let's dive into that in the next part of our deep dive. So the speaker believes that humanity is on the verge of something called a technological singularity.
Okay, for those of us who aren't quite up to speed on our futuristic terminology,
Right.
what exactly does that mean?
Well, it's a hypothetical point in time where artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence.
Okay.
And it leads to these rapid and potentially unpredictable technological advancements.
Wow.
Some experts believe that it's an inevitability, while others see it as pure science fiction.
So it's like a tipping point where technology takes on a life of its own.
Exactly. And the speaker suggests that maybe more advanced civilizations out there have already reached this singularity.
Oh, wow. Okay, now we're getting to the really out there stuff.
Right.
They're suggesting that these advanced civilizations might be using their super advanced tech to interact with us, less developed beings, through virtual means.
It's a fascinating idea.
So hold on a second. My mind is officially blown.
I know, right?
Is there any scientific basis for this kind of interdimensional virtual interaction?
Well, it's highly speculative,
Okay.
but it does tap into some pretty cutting-edge scientific concepts.
Like what?
For example, the idea of quantum entanglement,
Oh, I've heard of that.
where particles can be linked across vast distances that could theoretically allow for communication beyond our current understanding of physics.
Okay, so it's not entirely impossible that a civilization much more advanced than ours could have figured out how to harness these principles
Right.
for interdimensional communication.
It's definitely a thought-provoking possibility.
It forces us to really consider the limits of our own knowledge
Yeah,
and to acknowledge that there might be aspects of reality that are just beyond our current comprehension.
exactly.
It's like we're still using smoke signals while they're out there inventing intergalactic FaceTime.
I love that analogy.
And the speaker takes this idea even further,
Oh,
suggesting that maybe there's more to sex than we currently understand.
okay. This is where things get particularly sensitive.
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge that personal experiences and interpretations of sexuality can vary widely.
For sure.
What the speaker is describing might be deeply personal and symbolic.
Right.
It's important to approach these claims with respect and sensitivity.
Absolutely.
However, it's also worth noting that the speaker isn't the first person to report encounters with beings that have a sexual component.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a long history of folklore and mythology
Mm-hmm.
that includes stories of succubi, incubi, and other supernatural beings that engage in sexual activity with humans.
So maybe these stories reflect a deeper human fascination
Yeah.
with the intersection of sexuality, spirituality, and the unknown.
It's like we're trying to understand the boundaries of our own existence,
Right.
the nature of connection itself.
And the fact that the speaker finds some humor in this whole situation adds another layer of complexity.
It does.
They even compare these interdimensional beings to people creating avatars online.
I find that comparison really interesting.
Me too.
So instead of terrifying demons or aliens,
Right.
maybe they're just super advanced beings expressing themselves in ways that we can't yet comprehend.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're just having a bit of fun with you guys. Don't take it so seriously.
That playful element is actually present in a lot of folklore accounts of supernatural beings.
Right.
Tricksters, fairies, and spirits. They often blur the lines between reality and illusion,
Yeah.
challenging our perceptions and making us question what we believe to be true.
It's like they're reminding us not to get too caught up in our own limited understanding of the world.
Exactly. They're inviting us to embrace the mystery.
Right.
Keep an open mind.
And the speaker even mentions being able to exert some control over these encounters,
Oh, really?
being able to stop them if they want to.
That element of agency is really intriguing.
Yeah, it suggests that, at least in the speaker's subjective experience, they're not just passive recipients.
Right?
They're active participants.
Yeah. This could potentially be explained through the lens of lucid dreaming.
What's that?
It's where individuals become aware that they're dreaming,
Okay.
and they can actually exert some control over the dream narrative.
So even within these extraordinary experiences,
Yeah.
there's a glimmer of familiar psychological ground.
I think that's a really important point.
It's like, even if these encounters are originating from outside of ourselves,
Right.
our own minds still play a role in shaping how they unfold.
Precisely. Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of incoming information, even when that information is unusual or seemingly inexplicable.
And the way we interpret and integrate these experiences is inevitably shaped by our own personal beliefs and cultural background and psychological makeup.
Exactly. It's like we're all weaving our own narratives of reality based on our individual experiences and perceptions.
And that brings us to a crucial point in the speaker's narrative.
Okay.
They acknowledge that everything they've shared could be, quote, a load of rubbish.
Wow, that's quite a humbling statement after sharing such personal and potentially outlandish experiences.
It speaks to their self-awareness, I think,
I agree.
and their willingness to acknowledge the limitations of their own perception.
They're not claiming to have all the answers,
Right.
but they are emphasizing that these experiences have led them to believe that there's much more to reality than we currently understand.
It's like they're saying, take what resonates with you, question what doesn't, and keep searching for your own truth.
Exactly. They're inviting us to embark on our own journeys of exploration and discovery.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
I agree.
It's not about proving or disproving the speaker's claims,
Right.
but rather using their experiences as a springboard for exploring these bigger questions about consciousness, reality, and the nature of the universe.
Precisely. It's about expanding our horizons and challenging our assumptions about what's possible.
And who knows, maybe in doing so, we'll stumble upon some extraordinary insights of our own.
Now, the speaker draws a parallel between their experiences and the idea of exploring exoplanets.
Exoplanets.
You know those planets that orbit stars outside of our solar system?
Oh, yeah.
They're suggesting that advanced civilizations might use virtual means to interact with less developed worlds.
That's a really interesting analogy. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it highlights the limitations of our current understanding of the universe.
Okay.
We're just beginning to scratch the surface of exploring exoplanets,
Mm-hmm.
and the vast distances involved make direct physical contact highly improbable.
At least with our current technology.
Exactly.
So the speaker is essentially saying, if we as a relatively young technological civilization are already contemplating these possibilities,
Right.
imagine what a civilization thousands or millions of years ahead of us might be capable of.
It's a mind-boggling thought.
It really is.
It forces us to consider the possibility that our current understanding of physics and technology might be just a tiny sliver of what's truly possible.
It's like we're still figuring out how to use a hammer while they're out there building interdimensional spaceships.
And the speaker even suggests that these virtual interactions could explain the sexual nature of their encounters.
Okay, that's a really bold statement.
It is.
and one that we need to approach with caution and respect for diverse perspectives.
Absolutely.
It's important to remember that we're dealing with someone's personal interpretation of their experiences.
Right.
What they're describing might be deeply symbolic or metaphorical.
For sure. However, it's interesting to note that throughout history and across cultures, there have been stories and myths about supernatural beings engaging in sexual activity with humans.
So perhaps this speaks to a deeper human fascination with the intersection of sexuality, spirituality, and the unknown.
It's like we're trying to grasp something that transcends our ordinary experience, something that connects us to a realm beyond the physical.
And the speaker even mentions feeling like they can exert some control over these encounters, being able to stop them if they want to.
That element of agency is intriguing.
It suggests that, at least in the speaker's subjective experience, they're not merely passive recipients of these encounters, but active participants who can influence the course of events.
This could potentially be explained through the lens of lucid dreaming, where individuals become aware that they're dreaming and can exert some control over the dream narrative.
So even within these extraordinary experiences, there's a glimmer of familiar psychological ground.
Exactly.
It's like, even if these encounters are originated from outside of ourselves, our own minds still play a role in shaping how they unfold.
Our brains are constantly trying to make sense of incoming information, even when that information is unusual or seemingly inexplicable.
Right.
And the way we interpret and integrate these experiences is inevitably shaped by our personal beliefs, cultural background, and psychological makeup.
It's like we're all weaving our own narratives of reality based on our individual experiences and perceptions.
And that brings us to the heart of what makes this deep dive so captivating. We're exploring the very nature of consciousness, reality, and the limits of human understanding.
And the speaker's story, no matter how outlandish it might seem, is a powerful reminder that there's still so much we don't know about the universe and ourselves. It's like we're peering through this tiny keyhole into a room just full of possibilities.
And our minds are trying to piece together the bigger picture, just based on those little glimpses we get.
And the speaker even injects a little humor into the whole thing. Comparing these interdimensional beings to people creating avatars online.
I love that comparison.
Me too.
I think it's really insightful. It highlights how our perception of reality is increasingly mediated by technology.
Right? We create online personas, and we inhabit these virtual worlds. We interact with others in ways that, just a few decades ago would have been unimaginable.
Exactly.
So maybe these advanced beings, if they do exist, are simply using technology to express themselves in ways that we're just not equipped to understand yet.
It's like they're speaking a language we haven't learned.
Right.
But maybe with time and an open mind, we'll start to decipher the message.
And the speaker ultimately leaves us with a really powerful message. They acknowledge that everything they've shared could be, quote, a load of rubbish.
That's a really humbling statement, especially after sharing such personal and potentially outlandish experiences.
Yeah, it speaks to their humility, I think.
Definitely.
And their willingness to embrace uncertainty.
It's a good reminder that even the most extraordinary experiences should be approached with a healthy dose of skepticism.
But they also emphasize that these experiences have really fundamentally changed their perspective. Leading them to believe that there's so much more to reality than we currently understand.
I think that's the key takeaway from this whole deep dive. It's not about blindly accepting the speaker's claims, but allowing their story to spark our own curiosity and expand our sense of what's possible.
So what do you think about the possibility of interdimensional beings and virtual interactions?
Well, it's a question that really pushes the boundaries of our current understanding of science and consciousness.
For sure.
But it also invites us to consider the vastness of the universe and the infinite possibilities that lie beyond our limited perception.
It's a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge is a journey without a destination.
I like that.
And that the most important thing is to keep asking questions, keep exploring new ideas, and to keep challenging our own assumptions.
Because who knows what incredible discoveries await us if we dare to venture beyond the familiar and embrace the unknown.
Well, this deep dive has been a wild ride.
It really has.
Through the realms of consciousness, dreams, and the very fabric of reality.
I feel like my mind has been stretched in all sorts of directions.
We've explored one person's extraordinary account of encounters with beings they believe to be from another dimension.
All right.
And we've examined a range of possible explanations,
Mm-hmm.
from the psychological to the technological to the interdimensional.
It's been quite a journey.
But ultimately, the question of what's real and what's not is a personal one.
Yeah.
It's a journey of exploration that each of us must undertake for ourselves. So as you go about your day, keep an open mind, a critical eye,
And a sense of wonder.
and maybe a sense of humor.
Yeah, because the universe is full of wonders.
It really is.
And sometimes the most profound insights come from the most unexpected places.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep dreaming.
Because the truth, whatever it may be, is out there waiting to be discovered.
And until next time, keep diving deep.